Right into it. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. My name is Duncan Malkinson. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Village of Pouce Coupe. Been in the role for the last year, and I just wanted to give an overview of some things to consider for folks that are thinking about running for office, that are definitely sure they're going to run for office, or just mulling their options, or just generally curious. So just wanted to give an overview of local government in British Columbia. So the Village of Pouce Coupe is incorporated as a village under the community charter. It has a mayor and 4 councillors. The village runs the area within its boundaries only, which are delineated on that OCP on that particular map there. Council appoints 1 member to the Peace River Regional District Board. So there's a shared governance in British Columbia that operates services outside of municipal boundaries. We appoint 1 person to that board to make decisions on regional services. Focus tonight, though, is on just the municipal council for the village. And the village employs a council CAO model of governance, which is to say council provides overarching leadership and statutorily required leadership. And my job as the CAO, along with all my colleagues at the village, is to implement that direction. So there's a few different perspectives on how to view what local government or even the Village of Pouce Coupe does. This is an excerpt from that law that I was mentioning earlier, the community charter. It describes the purposes of a municipality, which is to provide for good government, provide for services, bylaws, and other matters for community benefit, provide stewardship of assets, and to foster economic, social, and environmental well-being in the community. This is a bit of a graphic from the Thompson-Nicola Regional District that I stole from them. It has different orders of government and what they generally do. Again, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District is not the exact same as the Peace River Regional District. And it's not the case that all of the municipal services that are listed there are necessarily services that the Village of Pouce Coupe provides, and the same goes for the regional government. But just for reference, the things that the village generally concerns itself with are building inspection, business licensing, passing bylaws, cemetery services, community halls, emergency management. Fire department is the village's responsibility. There's a liaison role with the local police force, the RCMP. Municipal property taxes, we collect those. Parks and playgrounds are a few things that the village runs. There's planning and development obligations that we have. There's some obviously road maintenance. Everybody hears about potholes. That's something that obviously we take quite seriously. There's street lights, transit, and water supply and wastewater. Those again are just some examples of what the village provide or what a local government would provide. A regional district, by contrast, they offer building inspection outside of the incorporated boundaries here. They elect to provide building inspection services outside of those boundaries, and they designate where those services are needed. They operate community halls. They operate some regional parks. They provided a regional emergency management function. They monitor invasive plants. They have regional planning services.
I stop right there.
Yeah.
So regional plants. So if somebody in the village has thistle growing in the yard and the village won't take care of it, so do they reach out to the regional district?
So the question for those that are attending online was whether or not thistle that happens in the village would be attacked or be dealt with by the regional government. There's
even though it's in the back alley,
right?
And whose responsibility is that?
That's a great question. So I think on a lot of the regional district has a overarching planning role for stuff within the village boundaries. I don't know that we've had amazing direct resources to confront that over the last little while, but I can get back to particulars on where the jurisdiction would lie. Sometimes, the coordination and support, the education with the invasive species stuff is left with the RD, and we try to, partner with them for those reasons.
A piece of property here in Pouce Coupe that is covered, the yard is covered, and the grass is this high. And the one, person has come in here several times and nothing is done with it. The thistle is growing in her garden. And person is at home, but he's got cameras.
If you want to share, maybe afterwards, if you want to share that address, what you're describing probably sounds like it's contrary to our nuisance bylaw or like standards of maintenance. So if you want to pass that along, bylaw could probably follow up with that person and say, hey, one, your grass is too high, but two, let's make sure that we're not being a nuisance to our other neighbors. Right? That's obviously frustrating for that resident for sure.
It is.
Yeah. Good question. Good question. What else do we have? And then there's some limited water and sewer systems that the regional district runs, but I'll not bore you with some of the details, but these governments or these functions are kind of built differently, whereas in the municipal government for the village of Pouce Coupe, it's kind of everybody pays in, everybody benefits. Regional government, there's a little bit more of a philosophy towards the people that are, in this service area. They're the ones that benefit, so they're the ones that pay. Again, that's maybe an oversimplification, but there's a principle underlying that. The provincial government, there's a BC Assessment. They operate healthcare services. They operate the justice system in BC. They operate, they collect provincial income taxes. They collect rural roads, and they do rural roads and highway maintenance, schools and education, social services, some transit services, and they coordinate wildfire and other responses. In the federal government, they do banking regulation, criminal law, employment insurance, foreign affairs, income tax, military, stuff like that. So if you're thinking that Pouce Coupe should forgive, somebody's student loans, then, maybe municipal government's not the best place for you. Right? Maybe the best place for you is to consider getting involved in federal circles. Why do people run? Again, I'm recognizing I'm a servant here. There's some great experience in the room that you could use to get some insights on why you might run. But a lot of folks run to give back to the community, to help shape the future, to bring a new perspective to things, to solve local issues, or to serve their neighbors. There's a lot of different reasons that folks get into it. But it's a valuable conversation to explore with your friends, with those that or with elected, current and past elected officials to, see what brought them into it. And then you can kind of, get a good sense of whether or not it's right for you. So this is pretty dense, but there's a couple of different perspectives on what council actually does, right? And the first one is the law. So the community charter has a couple of sections in here that describe what council does, what the responsibilities of council members are, and then the responsibilities of what the mayor are. So council as a governing body is responsible for doing all of the things that are charged under the community charter. It's responsible for passing bylaws, performing any power, duty, or function conferred on council by the community charter or any other law. Council members themselves, they're required to consider the well-being and the interests of the municipality and the community. They're required to contribute to the development and evaluation of policies and programs in the local government, in the village, respecting their services and other activities. Councillors are required to participate in council meetings, committee meetings, and any other meetings to the bodies to which the member of council is appointed. And the mayor, in addition to all the responsibilities of council members, is required to provide leadership to the council, including recommending bylaws, resolutions, and other measures that, in the mayor's opinion, assist the good government of the village. The mayor is responsible for communicating information to council, to presiding or leading council meetings when they're in attendance. Sometimes that's a bit of a sticker shock for some folks. They're not so inclined towards that. And this subsection here, D, is to provide general direction to local government officers about the implementation of municipal policies, programs, and other directions of council. And they can establish standing committees, and they have a couple other duties that are assigned throughout the community charter. But in a broad sense, council acts as when the council comes and has a meeting, they act collectively, and that direction is usually passed on either through the mayor, normally through the mayor to my position or to my position directly, and it's my job to implement. So the magic happens when everybody's together. The communication item that's referenced there is to offer clarity. It's to make sure that there's a good mayor and council or mayor and CAO relationship to make sure that council's will is being executed faithfully. Here's another way of looking at it. So in relationship to others, council's job is to set direction, make decisions, and to govern as a team. That's kind of a more simple way than this very dense thing that's included in the community charter, right? So that includes establishing the village's vision and priorities. It's adopting strategic plans and policies. It's approving bylaws. It's approving budgets, setting tax rates, prioritizing infrastructure and services, and to govern as a team, which means individual members have no individual authority outside of council meetings. Magic happens when everybody's in the room. And it's administration's job to implement council's decisions, all towards the goal of community success. There's a third and final way of looking at it, which is kind of the scopes of authority, which could be budget, policy, strategy, and oversight. So council again approves the financial plan, they set tax rates, they prioritize spending on service and infrastructure, they establish guides and standards, they make decisions in the public interest, and they set priorities and vision. They monitor organizational performance, and they hold me accountable. They say, Duncan, we asked you to do this, what's up with this? That kind of stuff. Eligibility. So to legally run in BC, you're required to be at least 18 years old on general voting day. You're required to be a Canadian citizen. You have to have lived in British Columbia for at least 6 months before filing your nomination. And you can't be disqualified under the Local Government Act or another enactment. So there's a couple of instances in BC law where a person might be prohibited from running. I think that relates to some past criminal charges. Exactly. As well as the criminal charges is what was mentioned for those listening online. And as well, if somebody doesn't file their Elections BC paperwork, for instance, there's tools that, or there's a list that's regularly published by Elections BC of persons that are prohibited from running in subsequent elections because they didn't have their paperwork. Right? It's important to make sure you do your campaign filing paperwork and all of your financial paperwork appropriately and to the T, so to speak. So I think a lot of folks in this room have picked up nomination packages, which is amazing. I have some ready tonight. They say, just assuming I don't scare anybody. And what's in that nomination package is nomination documents, some candidate guidelines, some financing information, some key election dates and deadlines, and some contact information for myself and one of my colleagues, Pauline, to answer any questions that you might have. Not assuming that you'll have all your questions figured this evening. There might be questions you have as you go through the process. What's the deal with this? What do I do about that? Our job is to make sure, everybody is feeling confident and everybody is, has the information they need to be a good candidate, right? And then once you submit your nomination, there's a window where you can do it. September 1st to September 11th. You submit your completed nomination documents during that time. Make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. And, we'll do our review as well. And, be conscious of the timeline there. There's a way where we can make corrections before the nominations close with you. But if you're submitting at 3:59 on September 11th, naturally our window to get those things corrected. So maybe keep that in mind. And then the nomination period, like I say, closes September 11th. Then we'll officially declare the candidates, and then the campaign period begins after that. And then we move into election day.
So how many actually took out packages?
I have a list. I think I have 6 out right now, or maybe 7. Yeah, we'll it's positive. I think we would, as a general matter, of course, the good participation is a good thing, right? So if we get folks that are interested in running or even on the fence, we're happy to, as unbiased as we can, try to offer as much info to people that are kind of thinking about it. So
do the people online get to see this here? Because in the council meetings, you can't see what you guys are looking at.
we're doing it a different way tonight. Great question. Right now we're screen sharing and recording the screen share itself. So the screen should be visible if all goes. That's the idea. So campaign finance. So there's a couple of, like I say, there's campaign finance is something to take seriously during your campaign. Campaign finance information and regulation is largely administered by Elections BC, which is done. It's an office out of Victoria. So in your nomination packages, there's a form for the appointment of a financial agent. That's one of the appointments you must make. You can act as your own financial agent, but you must appoint somebody to make all of the campaign related financial disclosures and submissions to Elections BC that are required. Make sure you're up to snuff on the Elections BC contribution and expense rules. Again, they're a great resource and can help you answer. They can help answer any questions that you might have. And after the election, whether you're successful or whether you're not, make sure you file your campaign financing disclosure. Deadline is January 15th, 2027. Time commitments. So again, I'd be remiss if folks were on the fence about running for council if I didn't mention that some of the time commitments that may be involved. Again, this is what I've observed from councillors. Councillors might have their own asterisks on these, saying, "Well, actually, I got 7 calls from members of the public this week, and that's part of the job that I probably don't see." So, some of the things that in my service role that I see are there's twice monthly council meetings. The way that they've been scheduled for 7:15 p.m. on Wednesdays this year. And special meetings are, called as required. I think we've had probably anywhere between a half dozen to a dozen a year, special meetings. And those typically fall in the evenings as well. There's training and workshops as well as conferences if, councillors are elected to go to those conferences. But basically there are a few orientation or workshops that happen per year. Those sessions can sometimes last between 2 to 6 hours and can sometimes be out of town. Examples of those is sometimes council will say, "We want to review the strategic plan. Let's all have a conversation and come together, and we're going to see what our collective priorities are, and we'll see what and sometimes that requires a focused approach. As well, council might wish to workshop certain issues or get orientation on certain issues. I think there's been governance orientations or governance refreshes that council has had over the last few years. And sometimes those sessions can take up some time too. And the conferences, like I mentioned, there's a big conference annually where not all, but some of the elected officials in BC get together to go to lobby the provincial government and pass resolutions to advocate to the provincial government that certain actions be taken. UBCM, so Union of British Columbia Municipalities is what it's called. And like I say, it's an elective thing, but sometimes that can take up time as well. Usually that happens in September. Occasionally, I think there's a policy that stipulates this, but there's also the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference that councillors will sometimes attend. And there's a few other,
there's also the NCLG.
Excellent point. Yeah, that's the North Central Local Government Association.
And they're each week.
Yeah, so because BC is so darn big, the idea is, well, let's have, a North Central one. And the North Central Local Government Association will in turn talk to Union of British Columbia Municipalities. It gets a little contorted. There's a lot of acronyms, but the whole idea is advocacy, talking with other elected officials about shared issues, stuff like that. And then reading agenda packages. So I mentioned these meetings. Again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody. Please don't think I'm trying to be discouraging. But sometimes, like our job as staff, less than our job is if council has a tough decision or a big decision in front of them, whatever decision they want to take, our job is to provide them with information to help them feel empowered or at least understand the risks on a certain issue, no matter what way it goes. So sometimes that means, oh, here's a report, outlining, some opportunities or some information for you to consider. so that you can feel confident in the decision that you make, no matter what it is. Sometimes that can mean that agendas get a little bit long though, right? We've had some that range, some that are 60 pages and some that are 200 and 300 pages long, right? So for each meeting, sometimes you'll get a fair amount of reading that comes with it. But sorry, Councillor Walt.
Did you find the shortest agenda we've had or something, come up with 60?
No, I just guessed.
They're usually most days there.
I don't know.
We had 570 something one time. Yeah, well over 300. Well, especially when there's no report involved. They're usually around 250, 300 pages. It's a lot of reading.
Yeah, it can be, and our job is to try to summarize where we can to give I was telling Councillor Woodall and Councillor Wall there, in some ways, we write the reports for ourselves too, so that we can kind of prove the idea to ourselves and make sure that it's cogent, but all the same, we need to make sure that the whole goal is the council feels confident.
And then you also have the regional districts
Oh, good.
agenda
Sorry.
to go through and read and be on the point of the
That's-
community.
That's a very good point, yeah. The mayor typically has been appointed as the representative, the director of the regional district board. And that brings its whole suite of meetings with it as well, so.
Oh, and there's the community organizations too, like the food bank, the library. And Legion's part of that now, and the museum and the senior center. So there's all those agendas too in meetings.
Yeah, there's a lot of different community groups that councillors will be
And then conflict of interest, we need to talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I was thinking for conflict of interest, definitely on the council orientation, emphasizing that. And then I think we'll get a section on it for everybody that does submit. I'm more trying to stick to, which you would chip, but I can give my cursory overview if you're curious.
Especially if the village is paying money into something,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then being a board member, that's kind of.
No, that's a very, very fair point. Election timeline. So I hope I'm not repeating anything, but in your packages there or in the nomination documents, there's a more exhaustive timeline than this. But nomination packages have been made available for folks to take out and kind of peruse through. There's that nomination period, September 1st to the 11th, where folks can submit their completed nomination documents to be declared a candidate. October 1st, 2026, please mark this in your calendars. There's a all candidates forum at the community center going to be happening that evening. So I believe there was one for the 22 election that was run by Mr. Rob Brown from This Week in Dawson Creek. I think we'll be getting him to, if all goes well, we'll be getting him to host that again. It's a great opportunity for members of the public to come in and ask questions or get to know some of the candidates and see what the heck's what's going on. And October 7th is an advanced voting opportunity, and October 17th is the general voting day. And November 4th, 2026, like I say, if all goes well, we'll have the inaugural council meeting, which will involve the swearing in. So it happens, I feel like it's going to happen very fast. Yeah, so we've got, after the election, there'll be a couple of orientation sessions where councillors get to know each other, where I'll offer, an administrative perspective on what the heck, we do, what the heck I consider the, council and staff relationship to be like. Again, at the end of the day, these are concepts that folks will, have, all different kinds of perspectives on. So there's a fair amount of discussion to have about it, I figured. And we can go over some of the legislation in more detail. We can talk a little bit more about local government roles in more detail. Then very quickly, you'll find that there's that pattern of council meetings that you'll, be sinking into and, to participate in. And I mentioned the swearing in ceremony. Then you're off to the races. It's I've been a long time thinking, oh, there's this and there's this and there's this. Underneath all of this, there's a great opportunity to debate about the future of the community, to discuss community and strategic planning priorities. And I think often you'll find folks get very passionate and feel very, excited to have those conversations, right? So before you decide to run, we're kind of summing up here. It's important to consider whether or not you're prepared for the time commitment. It's important to consider whether or not you can work with those that disagree with you. Sometimes that's not fun at all for some people that I've seen in the role. It's important to ask whether you're willing to learn or open yourself up to new perspectives. That's not saying that you need to change your perspective on anything, but do you have an open mind? That's kind of a question. A lot of what you do is rightly in the public eye in this role. So it's important to ask whether or not you're prepared for the public scrutiny that comes along with the role, right? Folks see you in a leadership position and, have that expectation of elected officials. Consider your eligibility. And lastly, might be good considering connecting with former or current elected officials to get a perspective on their service. That could probably lead you to a little bit of confidence on whether or not to run as well. So, question and answer. So we had a little bit about conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So the community charter, I think it's section 100 or section 99. There's some prohibitions on at the most basic sense of it, members of council having two masters, and that principle is basically you can't be maintaining a relationship or receiving a benefit that would cloud your free judgment in this role. So, for instance, if you were you had a local business and you wanted to strike up a contract with the village, and you were bringing that perspective to council, saying, "I think council should hire my business to do so and so." That gets to be a little bit challenging, right? That's a situation where somebody would be serving two things or two interests at the same time. So there's a prohibition in the community charter about that. Conflicts of interest, though, can be pecuniary or non-pecuniary. So there's ones where you might obtain a financial interest from a conflict of interest. Those are that's one vein, and then there's also ones where you might reasonably be perceived to be serving two masters, and that's in the sense of even though you're not getting any money, you might be conflicted in how you would conflicted in the interests that you might represent at the council table. So sometimes, folks, it's a very good question for you to bring up, former Mayor Ketty. Sometimes folks have found that it's very neat to recuse yourself of certain community leadership roles if you are elected to council, because it allows you in an unfettered sense to just serve the interests of the community as a whole. It's not a requirement of the role. It's something that some folks, they want to keep their leadership role with this nonprofit and with that nonprofit, right? Because if you're on the board of a nonprofit, there gets to be a question of which master are you serving? But it is something the community can be conscious of, and it's one of the few things that can get you a board order to get you removed from office if you're not respectful of those requirements. So it's I'm not sure if you have anything further to add on that.
I just think if any of the villages is paying into anything, that you don't sit on board.
Yes.
You don't, you can be a liaison, but you don't sit on board.
Mhm.
I think that is a conflict of interest, and you don't go work for somebody else while fixing or doing anything within the village.
Right.
Right?
There's courts have reviewed the tests for conflicts of interest over the years, and there's a little bit of grayness to tease out in them. I'm trying to remember a few interesting court cases or the examples where it's is a member of the public that theoretically benefits from the placement of washrooms at a soccer park, in a conflict of interest because they're a participant in the soccer league, right? There's something that's called an interest in common with everybody in the community. And there's courts have kind of ruled over time on whether or not a conflict is too close or whether it's too general to actually pass grade. But you're absolutely right. If you are asking the question about whether or not you're in a conflict of interest, there's all the money.
You also gotta think about that. As yourself. What's public good?
Absolutely, yes.
Is there an example or something that you're?
Oh, I have several examples, but I'm not gonna say.
No, it's understandable. But yeah, are there any other questions that come to mind? Come on, guys, don't let me off easy. You gotta grill me. Just kidding. It's an open door. I hope you guys. It's not an easy thing to again, nobody in this room has, definitively decided that they're going to, it ain't over until the paperwork's in, but. If there is any clarity that I can provide, from my vantage point, I'm very happy to do that. Oh, my goodness. It's Councilor Rattles. Sorry. Oh, no.
Another question I have, so if a business is on the main drag and is the village responsible for the sidewalks for both sides of the street? Or,
Sidewalks, probably, yeah.
oh,
There is one business that we've been working with that has a utility box that we don't own, but the sidewalk we do, so it's kind of how do we just figure this out?
well, because all winter long I saw that that side of the street was never part of snow plowed.
Oh, okay.
From well, their Sleepy Motel to all the way around to the school zone. to the school.
Is that on the north side of Highway 2 or the south side
Or somewhere on the way to town,
on the way to town? So that would be,
the corner building,
yeah,
the motel.
I feel
and the
like we
corner
should
building.
be, I feel like we should be on that.
No, I actually have pictures of that.
No, forgive me, what I'm saying is, if we haven't been, I feel like that's something that we should be on, so.
Yeah, because it's safety for the
Mention that.
community.
Well,
I've seen kids come by my house and they'll walk across the street and walk out there.
Yeah.
Right, and
And,
I've seen kids walking on the road as well.
right, and sometimes you'll get, MOD that'll come, like Ministry of Highways will come and they'll dump all their snow on the sidewalk and then it's, so let's go out and try to get it again. But no, that's very fair. We do have a snow removal policy that kind of identifies the priority areas that we try to get in first and work our way down to. I think that sidewalk would rank on that list of priorities that we would have. So yeah, it's a good point. It's not for us to watch for. Yeah. Right on. First question is, can you please go over the whole thing again?
No, James told me about it, so I just don't remember.
No, I'm sorry, if it's true, you just giving him a hard time, yeah, right on. Oh, shoot. Just keep in mind, again, it's not an easy thing to put your name out there, but congrats for being interested and congrats on, thank you for attending, I really appreciate it. Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, no, you finished.
Well, just if you do have more questions going forward, please reach out to me. I'll give you my business card here. I think it's in the nomination packages anyway, but yeah, thank you and hopefully wish everybody a peaceful and positive campaign.
You kind of share us.
Yeah.
So before I ran last time, I was shocked at how much time it actually takes to research everything that goes into it.